Whoa, I like this meme a lot, by the way. This one's cool. Did you post this one already? I haven't even seen this one. I like this. Conscious,
Oh,
subconscious, unconscious. Wow, this is
pretty
great.
cool.
I'll follow your heart. It might only let you down. Follow only reason. Emotions lead to treason. Only one thing will never let you down. To believe in yourself. Believe in the reasons that you have laid out in the argument that will last forever.
I'm blown away how we have to unmute ourselves. I don't know if I can unmute you. I have to ask you to unmute. Hey, everybody. I'm Andreas. Welcome back to an APM. This is Kurt Weidorfer, the APM. He talks a lot, but he's a mime. There he is.
Okay.
I did that to him on purpose. Not really, but I can imagine how it felt. At least I can empathize, and that feels like it was intentional now, in retrospect. How you been?
I have certainly been overall it's been a good week, but I've definitely been feeling that grind on my job in the sense of where oh wow, I've been at this place way too long and now
That's good. It's a Fight Club feel, yeah.
Yeah.
No, everybody what? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No, I feel like most Americans feel that way. Now I think people on average change jobs like every 2 or 3 years. And I put in 3 years at this place and I feel like I maxed out my value. It's oh, this is as valuable as I'm going to get here. Cause it's nice because it's a family owned business, but the opposite end of that is like most service jobs, it's oh, literally the next person in line for another position is a family member that's going to be there forever. So it's yeah, it's just weird times right now.
Right. There's a certain amount of nepotism and a certain amount of automation.
Yeah.
Was it 80 or 90% of the jobs that have been lost in the last 2 to 4 years have been lost to automation, or even 10 years, right? But that doesn't stop the people that own the jobs from trying to figure out ways of getting their kids to work there, which is cool, because you want to keep generational family businesses going. But there's still the only way they're able to do it, it's like the farm that has to get monocropping and has to when you become a serfdom to what kind of chickens are those again? The farm. What's that called? That chicken company everyone eats chicken from. Man, I forget.
Everybody?
Tyson? Foster Farms, Tyson, whatever those things are. Yeah, those chickens are owned by the farm, Foster Farm company, but they're on the farms of other actual chicken farmers. So they've got this thing happening to them. They don't even own the chickens, and it's just going through. That's a lot like what it's like to own a pizzeria. That's a lot like what it's like to own a taco shop. That's a lot like what it's like to live in America, right? You got a franchise and you're buying stuff from Costco or Cisco or whoever's co, and then PepsiCo.
Fucking Costco.
Then PepsiCo buys you, man.
Now I've been watching earnings. Target shat a brick on their earnings this week because they're like the expensive form of Walmart. Nobody shops there anymore because they don't have any money.
Yeah, right. Dude, Walmart screwed themselves too, because they made these laws at one point that said, hey, you're going to have to sell things for a higher price in America, even if you can get them cheaper in China. And in order to not put out of business all these small businesses, which in the first, that's awesome, because then they're just making way more money because they have to sell it at a higher price and people are still going to buy it. But now they're kind of competing with Amazon, and Amazon's opening in Nigeria and everywhere, and very soon it's just going to be, by 2023 it's going to be so much easier just to get stuff delivered to your house than it is to go to Walmart, that most people won't, because it's going to cost money to drive and park and anxiety. Did you see that guy? What's his name? Man, he's like the comedian from McLovin, the guy who played McLovin.
I forget what his name is. What do you do?
He or not that kid, but one of the cop guys or whatever. It's like the Rogan-y looking kid. He's not going to go to any more of his movie premieres because he says he has anxiety. He's afraid to. He's always had anxiety seeing the red carpets and to getting the photos taken and everything. So he's just never going to do it anymore. He's going to have someone else go for him from now on.
I resonate with that super hard. No, I don't think fame is generally a good thing. I think it's really good at warping people. Have you seen BoJack Horseman?
Oh yeah, dude, I
Yeah.
love BoJack. That's my life. I am BoJack. That's what I feel like.
Like excellent show. And like I always will remember that line. Like it just stuck with me ever since I seen it like the first time. And they're describing celebrity life. And I think it's Diane that's saying it. No, it's not Diane, it's someone else. But basically they're saying, imagine you were 20 years old and then you got rewarded for being exactly who you are for the next 20 years. That's
Don't go changing. Right.
Yeah. That's how I've come to see it. I don't know any celebrities, but there does seem to be evidence there if you like look closely enough. Like a lot of celebrities have struggles with like having a lot of depth to them because they've never had to have depth because it's always been kind of put before them. And there's exceptions to that, of course, but
yeah, I mean, for the most part, all the celebrities I've seen, they're upset that they have been famous for speaking other people's words, not their own, right? Not all of them, but the ones who are upset, right? I think there's a lot of celebrities I know who don't like to have opinions or have their own words, and they don't. That's why they won't do certain talk shows, not because they they just don't want to talk. They don't have thoughts about things. They'd rather speak at an award show, a script, that's fine. They can do that. It's part of their lifestyle to put energy and emphasis into words and stuff, but to really feel things about things that they'd have to like study, which don't impact them. And so many celebrities really pretend that these things impact them because they want meaning in their life. And then that feels pretty shallow to like legitimately basic but based people.
I mean, a lot of people think they would trade their lives immediately for to be a celebrity. And like I think, well, my mind's been like warped just by seeing how crazy people go over just like small town bullshit, like, well, when I lived in Illinois, there was like the local badass musician, where they get like locally famous, but they get locally famous just for like singing cover songs. And but you can see like what it does to their own ego. Like, yeah, I could sing this cover song better than anyone here,
Yeah, it's a weird legitimacy because it's legitimate. I mean, it comes from the ancient, you've got medieval bards and people singing these and playing these lutes and things. And in any country, you still could go to up until very recently, and even into the 90s, bands playing. It seemed reasonable to have bands playing at a high school prom instead of a DJ. But we're pushed away from that. It's like, oh yeah, no, you're not really supposed to do that. I mean, you're not supposed to be good at that. And so anybody who doesn't buy into that and figures out that they can play guitar, if they just discipline themselves and like they have, I mean, not everybody can, but when you can figure out that most people just won't even try and they just think it's not worth it.
Well,
or that they can't.
Yeah, I think conditioning is becoming like a terrible thing, like in some regards, because it's teaching people you shouldn't be creative. And we have a lot of leftover, our education system is bad in a lot of respects because we're still being trained to be factory workers, even though we're in a lot of ways we're not as industrial as we were before. But the crazy shit I was still like substitute teaching when like COVID, like in the middle, like aftermath of COVID, where they were still taking precautions. And I like just walking into these rooms there were rooms in the building that had no windows, and literally like the desks are like 6 feet apart and staring like the same direction. I'm just like, I couldn't imagine just like a more adequate prison, for people. It's like, it's cliche to call a school prison, but like when you're
it's accurate,
I think it is accurate. I think it's designed to suppress creativity. My last girlfriend, she has a doctorate now. And I think she wanted me to be more educated. And I'm
by
like,
whom, right? That's the thing.
Yeah. And like I said, she talked like she always wanted to, like learn the piano or take the piano, and she wouldn't do it because she was afraid of how bad she would suck. I'm just like, everybody sucks. That's how it is. But it's like I think a lot of that comes from cultural shaming. I don't think it was just her.
Yeah,
That's
cultural
just
shaming is huge. And it's funny because they put the people who suck the most in the pop star positions a lot of the time who can't play the instruments. They're the ones that they built the ego up the most, you know.
yeah.
It's pretty
Yeah.
scary.
We could talk a lot about the pop world. It's and how just like artificial and stupid it is.
I want to do it. Let's go into the monkeys because that's something that came up recently. Was the anniversary of the Head movie, but I want to go back for a second to prison school because I have a story. I have a friend who went to school in Arizona, and when he got to the high school, they'd been saying, "Wow, there's so many kids now. We're gonna have to build a new high school." So they got a bunch of tax money, built this amazing giant new building that was just so good that the prison said, "No, we need it. We need this building. We're going to use it and turn the high school building that you just built into a prison." And then the high schoolers needed a building because it wasn't, they had already moved out of their school, or it was, you know, whatever the earmarks are, or whatever the deal is. They switched it with the prison. So the prisoners went to the high school and the high schoolers went to the old prison building. And I've seen pictures of this place. And you know, I want to tell you that it's like the most terrifying place you've ever been, but it just looks like a high school now because high schools and prisons and parking structures and et cetera are all built by the same municipal architects. And so we have got to a point where there's a certain amount of zombie proofing to your Safeway supermarket, right? It's just preparedness for another 2008 or 29 or whatever, you know what I mean? They're ready for it. But there's also the schools and the building. I mean, how fast can you put chicken mesh around around one of the parking structures and turn it into a human processing facility? Well, we've seen people actually compete, you know, to do that after Katrina into the the 21st century. We're seeing more and more examples of how quickly they can turn a municipal building into its like most logical purpose. Because again, these are military architects, the municipal system, it's confluence there. Not always, but I mean, usually if you're going to build a building for a school, you could also be considered to build a building for, you know, the NSA or for the Marines or for an army base, you know. So it is interesting how, and or for prison, right? And so it is a connected concept, not just in terms of this weird a causal synchronicity, but also because they are just so close together in terms of the things that make them happen organically. They are connected concepts.
Yeah. And I guess like if you wanted to convert like any building into any other building, I think there is like you could do it. Like you could make almost any high school like be a government building immediately.
Right. The
Because
concrete ones especially, right?
yeah, it's the same I guess plasticity.
I mean, it's specific though. It's not any building to any building because they don't like the suburban houses are designed to be biodegradable. I think we got a super chat. Travis, I love you, bro. It says if gravity is a constant at negative 9.81 meters per second squared, but is measures as weaker at the equator and high altitudes, wouldn't that make gravity a variable? Am I understanding this wrong? Yeah. I believe that most people that are worth their grain in salt would consider both speed of light, density, what was the other one? Gravity, right? Gravity, which is even so they would think of all these things as variables already. Light has a variable speed, but also gravity itself is a variable of so many things, right? Because we're saying, oh, well, gravity is the confluence or consequence of density and et cetera, and electromagnetism and spin states, which if you've seen the episode with Jeremiah, he goes deeper into this idea that there really is something to the concept of gravity. It's not just completely nonsensical, but it isn't anything like it's been described for the last 100 years. It's a little bit more like it was described right before that, right? That's where I'd go with that. But okay, but with the prison system, I do want to say the schools, I've been to schools that had bulletproof glass and window tarps for the windows that were blast plastic. So if the windows were to be hit by an explosion or something, then they would just be grabbed by the window tarps, right? So there's all this preparedness that's already happening for this stuff in these buildings, and that was in California. So they do that, but then you've got the Californian home, and the home and all these places, they're designed out of these organic materials, or worse, plastic materials that burn and make it smoke even quicker, right? So houses that can just melt quickly, right? And they're made of biodegradable materials, and it's not designed to last, right? We're not building houses for the suburbans. Even these multi-million-dollar homes, for a lot of time, are made out of pretty falling apart materials designed to last for 25 years, not 75 anymore, which is crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get anywhere near, Fahrenheit 9 or 411,
Right.
yeah, we have to have fireproof stuff, right? That's how we get to censorship. We have to make everything fireproof.
Yeah, I
I'm
mean, we are at a point where basically everything is designed to self disintegrate, and that's been a pushed concept. We want things to be able to disappear really quickly, but where does that leave? What are the? I mean, we don't even have photo albums. Most people don't have photos; they just have digital copies, right?
Yeah, which comes with its own problems. But I think the most worrying thing that comes up about that is like how do you build any sort of sense of culture? Not to say that culture is, the end goal of any civilization, but I mean, I think it's at least flavorful, you know what I mean?
Right.
I think
Sticky Mark says, "Howdy ho, way gravity doesn't exist. LMPs X." There you go. Thank you for the £5. Yeah, I mean, I don't think that gravity is you know this is a thing. A lot of people confuse gravity with buoyancy, or they try to use gravity as this thing that's keeping them. I think gravity is an interesting metaphor for social control, because it's like everyone's standing on this thing upside down like bats. And what is gravity? It's the man. It's keeping you down. It won't let you rise up, right? And it's always this thing. Will you rise up? Like, will you climb? Like, how high will you climb, son? Are you winning, son? Like, what happens when the steps turn to cliffs? Will you scale them? Will you climb, son? Will you get to the others that have fallen, that have stopped climbing, they've stopped ascending? Will you climb over them? What about the ones that are still climbing? Will you scale them too? Like, that's what social control is. And they're saying, no, you can't, because gravity's keeping you down. I don't know. I feel like that's the biggest problem with the whole idea.
fucking gravity.
Right.
Now, now, with all respect due to gravity and donations, is like gravity. I think we're here to talk about spiritual bullshit and we're here to connect Donald Trump to Jinping somehow.
Yeah. Through Dick Cheney and Bill Maher. I feel like they're all tied concepts now too. Man, the talk show is a weird thing. I was looking at the Illuminati card game, and you've got these like different cards. And so one of them is the Shock Jock, and there's a German expansion series for the card game that includes the Talk Master. And the Talk Master is, he's got the cult of personality +8. And he's able to influence special interest groups, right? So it's an interesting format. And you look at all of these different shows and the way that they go. You've got like the extreme right and the extreme left, and they're both saying, I found recently, ironically, to be pretty much the same thing. They show us these clips that we don't really watch, like CNN and stuff, and like there's like some extreme things out there, but you see like Bill Maher, and he's saying exactly the same thing as like Adam Krigler and us are saying about the trans issues. Like the left has also moved away from that, right? That was something I was talking about it yesterday. It just seems like we really have pigeonholed all the most extreme issues in order to make everything seem so dynamic and different. But it should be looked at more like holistically, like it's this giant theater, and how Ocasio-Cortez and Trump really they look well together as a dynamic it's like a part of the Kubrickian art, right? And we're looking at the world in this way. We're like, oh, he's such a villain. Like, do you remember the people who said, Scar was a cool villain in Lion King? Like, we need politics to be analyzed more like that.
Now, is Horseshoe Theory, right?
Yeah, I mean, I was saying that yesterday too. I was talking because I was on Nina's show. I don't know did you see Nina's show yesterday?
No.
We brought up this whole thought because a lot of people used to be centrists, and there's these people that are becoming centrists. But centricism is where you lose yourself to the issue, right? You're like, well, our party's so big, our tent's so big that we'll lose ourselves. And that's good for some circumstances, right? Like if you've got like a really, like some of the, again, extreme issues of the Christian nationalists or of the trans community or of the vegans or the Petco or the, all of these things. Sometimes those can be like brought to a center point, and that can help people by saying, hey, to the greatest good of all beings, right? That'll help animals, trans people, and vegans, right? It'll just help us all, including gun owners. But then there's the real extremists. And I think the real extremists and the heterodoxy, that's the thing that's most They have the most in common because they really care. They both really care about something. So that puts the extremes together, and they're far closer in line than the centrics, because the centrics are giving up on going their direction, right, to become each other, whereas the extremes are becoming themselves so much that they end up smashing into each other on the other side. And so you've got leftists who love guns, right? Marxists wanted a Kalashnikov. That's a Marxist ideology to have a gun. It's not a right-wing idea to have a gun, or a left-wing idea for that matter. People want to have guns as it's a tangible, non-abstract. Marijuana comes to mind. Founding fathers like guns and marijuana, right? It's non-abstract. It's a thing that people care about. Doesn't matter if you're left or right. There are right-wing people, you can be damn sure, that care about their rights to privacy, to their to having the First Amendment protect and not be forced to quarter people, etc. Just like the other way around. I mean, everyone makes it into like a kind of a political sphere when it's really this oligarchical, two-faced Dyson, this diamond, right, which has got the blue shaded face and the red shaded face, and it's coming down upon us. And then there's the people, and the people are both usually supposed to be like, monsters, and one's like, it's got a red face, like, no, it's so huge, it's even got a blue face on the other side, it's that big of a monster. But instead you've got people saying, oh my god, I hope the red-headed snake wins and kills the blue-headed snake of its own snake. It's like, but they're divided from the same thing. Yeah, but I really hope that I mean, it's a weird place to be.
You have to tame the whole animal.
You did, right?
Which I thought it was hilarious. I read The Count of Monte Cristo, and I was like, oh wow, they smoke hash. It's like,
indeed.
There was a definite point in history where hash was just kind of normal, and nobody cared. And
I think it's very recent that it isn't that way.
I think it's because it became popular with the lower class. That's the number one way.
I think the lower class, it was popular with I'd further it. I'd say the indigenous people became the lower class, or the former empire that was conquered was then the lower class. So you've got the Arcadians, right, and the Cajuns, and they were associated with cannabis use. Germans and Scandinavians, the British, the Queen of England in the 1600s using menstrual cramp ointments, tinctures made from cannabis. So it's not like too outside the sphere. But then the Arabs, who have been conquered, because the Arabs controlled Spain and Spain controlled Holland, the Arabs who've been conquered, they're therefore looked down upon. You see this with the Latin, the confluence of Black with Arabic, with Spanish, with Mexican. All of that is connected. Hey, Richard's going to join. That's going to be interesting.
All right,
dude. Richard, the Max Klaus, the Deutschman, he's jumping in. He's the he's the Metamax. But hold on, where was I at? I forgot. What were we saying?
Talk about hash and class.
Oh, right. Marijuana, because it's Latin, because Latin and Spanish is connected with Arabic, and Arabic's connected with Black. And it's this whole British thing that they were racist against British Muslims, because the British Muslims were, after the Queen had made the deal with Morocco, and then George Washington went to Morocco and got Morocco to acknowledge them as the first state. Morocco is the first country to acknowledge the United States as a free state. And then Haiti, right, is acknowledged, and then the Haiti acknowledges Chile, and it's just this whole thing. And so they have a whole racist thing, and marijuana is tied to racism because of that, basically.
All right.
I don't know.
No, well, drugs are weird. Well, I guess pivoting off of that, it's not exactly related. I didn't know if we had a central topic we were trying to get back to or not.
Oh, I don't care. Just talk about whatever. I like pushing you to make subjects too,
Ergotism.
Oh, that's right. Okay, this is good because you did bring up ergotism, and I think we can totally. So, guys, you know what ergot is? LSDs made from ergot.
Apparently discovered by accident to a degree.
Oh, is Richard like quietly in the room in the background? Like, you should turn on your camera if you're here. Is that what's going on, Richard? I don't know. I heard him for a second. But
Yeah, bro.
Yeah, turn on your camera, dog.
Turn what?
Turn your camera on. Give him a second while you talk about ergot. He'll figure his life out.
So I I have this theory about ergot that, well, I mean, it's not exactly a theory, but I think like
Hello?
it's hard to talk about its hallucinogenic effects.
Jesus, did you just get out of the sauna? Look at you. This is adorable.
Ooh, this is super choppy tonight.
I
Oh,
don't know.
I don't think my setup likes the Zoom.
Oh, you might be without a paddle. I'm sorry, buddy. I don't know.
Oh, I don't think my setup.
Get yourself better Wi-Fi. If you can't get it to work, we'll do it again. If you have a problem, it's fine. We just talk about ergot right now. And I was.
Sorry, bros. It's my Wi-Fi. It's too spotty for Zoom. It worked in Streamlabs. I'll just keep you guys to it. Okay. Let's do it some other night.
I'm gonna get you a coffee can with a Wi-Fi card in it. We're gonna set you up with Elgato. You're gonna start making sense. The reason I wanted to bring him in also because if we talk about ergot, and we'll do this soon, but we'll talk about ergot now. But
we'll do this soon. Yes. I'll work on my setup. Is my audio better tonight? I'm using a different mic.
No, we're gonna have to get you a real mic.
No? Okay. Oh, awesome. All right. Well, let's do this some other night. Sorry I bugged in. Have a good night, boys.
It's good, man. I'll talk to you soon. I love how impromptu and irregular our reality is. You know that we
kick me out, man. I can't find the.
That's not bad. I love how irregular our show is that we can do that because I feel like other people won't allow for chaos, and chaos is really the most important thing. The reason I'm gonna put this in because we're gonna talk about ergot and psychedelics is that in the 15th century, and I have a couple of videos that have mentioned this before, but maybe not as clearly as this, or now it's gonna be in the middle of this. Anyway, the dancing plague. Strasbourg, 18, 12, somewhere little. I think it's 1518. It's right at 1523, 24. It's right after Gutenberg's kind of getting a little out. There's a little bit of copying going on, post-Arabic copying, and the Reformation isn't quite hit yet. And so you've got a bunch of people getting rotted grains, which has happened recently enough in the 50s and 70s. There's been major ergot breakouts across India and in the world. And, you know, the CIA has been associated with ergot poisoning grains in France and creating LSD experiments on people that were really similar to this, because in the 50s, right, they have these villages that are freaking out on acid. Well, ergot hit this village. They all ate the grain, starting with the rich, of course, because they had the most grain. Poor people being like, what's going on? Then you've got these sequestered ministry of priests that are eating the grain, and they're all going crazy. They send off some priests. By the time the priests come back to Strasbourg with some, you know, more priests to see what's going on, the priest sheriffs looking over the thing see all these people on acid, essentially on ergot, that are burning, because it's not exactly the same as LSD. You've got this burning sensation and all this horrible stuff happening to you, and it'll cause you to just, you know, it feels like needles and grass, and you're becoming one with like pain and pleasure. It's like very Catholic, psychedelic, medieval LSD trip. It's very beautiful to think about. It's very Ingmar Bergman, but they were freaked out and they burned it down.
Oh yeah. And like that aspect that you were talking about, like there doesn't seem to be much like open literature on like what exactly the psychedelic experience is like for ergot. Well, it's I think disclaimer: no one should ever try this ever, because
it can kill you. It can kill you, and it's got physical pain. They've called the descriptions of it have been out there though. So St. Anthony's fire. They have some names of it, and so you just look at some Salvador Dali paintings, and there's even other paintings of St. Anthony walking across the desert, poisoned by ergot, feeling all of these demons raping him, right? That's basically, he's got this crazy 9 demons that are just flying around him, and their genitals are all in his face in every direction, right? And he just had to get through that because he was a Manichaean.
Yeah, it sounds wild, but like I almost wonder if there's like some sort of like you could almost call it like a black trip, because like ergot can lead to like literally what's the word for losing your limbs? Whatever. Like cattle lose their limbs all the time, and like when you're having like these visions,
amputation. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, like whatever the amputation is for just like having your limbs rot off. It sounds like
gangrene, and this happened to people with research chemicals as well. There's an outbreak of dragonfly, bromo dragonfly, that killed a bunch of people in Denmark and Scandinavia in 2012. I mean, there's been a number of circumstances where they've reverse engineered NBOMs that have been dangerous based on ergot that can cause hypertension and all kinds of things. Ergot can cause hypertension that can actually cause gangrene, and you can lose limbs, and it's the crocodile of the 1500s.
You just have a heart attack and die.
One would hope. I mean, it's at that level, I mean, it's the thing is like, people in the old days associated psychedelics with suffering and pain more than we do today. Your diet would have to change. You'd have to go through a ritual. It was part of a taboo or a fetish. Those words don't mean what they used to, right? Like a taboo is a ritual that a tribalman goes through. He goes through the taboo. And once he goes through the tribal taboo, he has to deal with a fetish. A fetish is this, magical amulet. Like Indiana Jones is holding a fetish. That is what that is. So,
nice.
So people kind of, yeah. Then I'm sure there's a great Kubrickian connection to that. But,
So let's say theoretically, and here's what I don't really know. A lot of people modernly that take psychedelics, like we'll say LSD, DMT, and mushrooms, they might I think a lot of people have been, in some ways converted to believing in the spiritual world because they have had access to these substances. And so
but not always into God, which is interesting.
Yeah, what like Sam Harris thought MDMA, I guess, led him to the belief that God doesn't exist. But I think there's just a semantic cutoff there. It's like a lot of your definitions are just important when you get to that level, I guess. Like, how do you define God? And I think his definitions of God makes him think, whatever. Different subject, I guess. But let's say, for example, we take LSD, mushrooms, and DMT, and we treat those things as being access to the spiritual world. I think it's either a possibility that those things can represent, that certain element of spirituality to where you get a certain level of access to the spirits that are out there, and a certain level of pattern recognition to be able to understand those spirits. I theorize that ergot, in the nature that it has been taken, it might be literally that natural guide to the black spiritual realm, like the dark spirits. And it sounds weird to say, yes, I think that's a possibility. And there's either that possibility, or there's a possibility that a lot of people, just now we have a culture of mass psychedelic usage to a certain degree. So a lot of people that use psychedelics, they'll definitely be open to using them. So I think if you gave a person that was unsuspecting to being on DMT or psilocybin, they might appear like an insane person, for half an hour or like however long the trip lasts. So I think there's either the possibility that ergot really is the demon trip, and you get access to like there might be a weird spiritual world out there to where you can actually make, apocalyptic sort of predictions off of it. Or if that isn't the possibility, the other possibility is that these people really were in such a different mindset, culturally speaking, that they were not anywhere near prepared to be introduced to the spiritual realm. So ergot might be kind of a somewhat, I guess, normal psychedelic trip, but and slightly painful, but people were not prepared for it, and so that's what caused the bad trip. So I'm not sure exactly what to assume about that.
There's okay, so there's a couple of things there. One is like ergodism, going back, is one of the oldest, it might be the oldest kind of recorded toxicity, that they called it the daughter of blood in the ancient Assyria and the Assad Empire. And it was associated with seizures and epilepsy and all kinds of things. However, right, it is a mold, and does a lot of the same things a lot of other molds do, which is it protects itself to an extent. It also proliferates itself, and so for it to grow and to take over, wheat fields, it's not always. It is variable. What level of ergot when you're consuming the ergot, if you're paying attention, and there are ways that they even used it to make rituals, which is, has come up. The daughter of blood is an insinuation to one of the three goddesses. I forget if it's associated with later Hecate, though, when it becomes the three daughters' head. Because, and this is also funny, because Salman Rushdie, well, funny. Don't fatwa me when I say that Salman Rushdie's book refers to this idea that the Alawites had of, like the 12th Imam and nephew of Muhammad, that the honorable Muhammad, that there that there is supposed to be this three-headed God that gave a prophecy, or was given in the prophecy by the devil to Muhammad, and Muhammad said, and this is so old of a writing that it seems it would be at a time it would be unusual to make up Muhammad making the mistake, that he thought it sounded like God, but he knew that it wasn't God, right? That's their whole thing. But for a while there, he preached the name. He was told to by Lucifer, the Satan, to Shaitan, to preach the names of the three goddesses of the ancient world, which would then be associated closer to Hecate. And that is another thing that comes up with Saint Anthony, right? And Saint Monica is his mother, and so the patron saint of Santa Monica, who is the patron saint of failed marriages and disappointing children, which explains both Santa Monica and also Los Angeles. But then also Saint Anthony, he had not believed in the singular God. He's believing in the dynamic wrestling of the two forces, which has permeated Christianity and our culture, the city of good and evil being that specific, because it isn't. That's not what Abraham says. And most of these things are all about, there's so many choices and there's one correct choice in all of them, right? And it's not just right or wrong, like good or bad. That's a whole different kind of good and bad is different. Chaos and order, right? There's chaos, and then there's all of chaos, which is holding it all together. And then there's the order, which is this very limited concept within the chaos, right? That's held by and really chaos is order itself. And then order is chaos because it doesn't fit with
the universe is irrational and God is the rationality trying to interject itself.
Right. And that's a fair,
I'm quite like semi-quoting Ballas again.
Yeah, that's a fair. We were just Philip K. Dicking around earlier, and I was watching some Man in High Castle, which I was reminded of the scene where they have a American informant who's attacked the Obergruppenführer, and he has to extract data. So they're using LSD from ergot extraction to get this guy to tell them what's really going on, and he's like, how's this going to work? And they're like, the Obergruppenführer asks. And then the scientist is like, well, he's going to think he's one with everything. And so he won't have a reason to hold anything back because he'll just assume that you already know everything because you're all one anyway. So, yeah. I mean, there's something
bad assumption though.
Well, yeah, it didn't work out in that world, but
yeah,
at the same time, I think it does in a lot of cases work out for us. Humans they're more transparent than they've ever been. They're less adept to privacy. People don't care about it as much. I mean, it doesn't matter to people like the way it used to. I mean, even the Edward Snowden stuff is only hitting like about a 10% of the liberal audience, right?
Yeah, if we talk about privacy, like I think it's probably better to value privacy to a certain degree, and I think that's what people are missing, because I feel like it leads it can lead to a lot of other problems, generally speaking. But say we have no means of attacking each other for what we believe. Some might think that's a good world, I guess, if we have no ammunition to attack each other with. But I think to a certain degree, the reality we have is the reality we create for ourselves. And that we can only create a certain degree of reality if we have a reasonable means of having privacy. And one of the reasons why maybe we don't have privacy is we have such a strong fear of being judged for our actions now. Right. And I think that is one thing people aren't paying attention to. Like,
also building reality is an interesting point in itself, because a lot of people don't think, they're like, oh yeah, building your reality, but then there are people that are building cities and houses and like Trump has built like part of New York City to look away, and it affects reality. And so yeah, in a lot of really realistic ways that are impacting people's lives one way or another, you can build reality, and that's what humans have to do.
Oh yeah, and like it's possible to say, the only reality takes on many different definitions in a functional sense. But like, if we're saying what is the reality that matters to us, a lot of it is our cultural reality. Right now we're speaking English, and English is, it's a language. and this is also a subject in Dallas. I didn't mean to bring it up that way, but to a certain degree, language is our reality. And then you understand this more if you start to learn other languages. You're like, oh, there's a word for that thing, and there's no word for that thing in our language. It's almost like a whole new concept to you.
That came up with Nina last night as well, because she's from Iran originally and moved to Canada, and so I'm sure she had to learn some French along the way too. So there's 3 different things there. Plus, you're talking to your grandparents a certain way that you wouldn't talk to your friends, and so the anthropologists call it code switching, but it really is kind of different personalities, multiple personalities, because you've built up a way of thinking with a different kind of symbol. And I do this like sometimes and I like to talk to people that are friends of mine from other countries in their own languages, because it makes me think differently. I will think about concepts using the Greek roots or the Germanic roots differently than, in American English is awesome, because it is like this crazy concoction that you can literally just make up words. As a Californian, it's the best license to make up words, right? And then you can just use anybody else's. You can culturally appropriate it. It's fine. And I don't care if you say it isn't. I can say sayonara, dude, kawabunga, bro. Like I can do anything I want. That's awesome.
Creativity.
Sayonara, amigo. Take that. But I mean, they don't let you communicate more and more, and it's not the language. It is the thing that the language is made of, that Chomsky described, and it's give him that one thing, is that it is a series of communication tools. So if you take away the ability to communicate about those things or experiences, then you can break down communication.
Well, now you can't mediums. Our social media is so weird, because like now I'm hesitant to, say the thing, but we know what we mean if I just say the thing. That means the disease that went around a couple of years ago. And a lot of YouTubers want to move to saying the thing instead of saying the actual thing, because they will move to get censored. Now we know, now that I'm helping mod your page, is like they alert you to 2 words. They alert you to when people use the word gay, and to when people use the word for National Socialist member. I don't want to say the weird word, because I think YouTube's kind of on that weird, sketchy stuff too.
Yeah. Robots look for sounds, and then they try to break them down. And sometimes I'm lucky because I'm at the point where I can give them context, and they'll talk to me afterwards. But they, these videos all go yellow. They start red, they go yellow. And then someone says we've manually monitored and viewed the video and found that it's acceptable. And then it goes green, usually a day or 2 later. And that's every video, because they assume that the likelihood of me, basically we have so many topics in a show. We talk for hours, and the likelihood of there being 20, 50 topics, or 10 to 20, 50 topics, one of those being, it's more than 1 out of 50, because the probability, while it's in the sphere of context, is higher. So they're also, it has to be, specific to an extent. And it's weird, because we could just make videos like Mr. Beast. Like, it would be better if we had just made a video of me in a pool for 24 hours. I think people would have watched it. That would have been fine. But there's also, I think, a need for it. Like, because of the fact that there's that much of a vacuum, and then simultaneously it's made easier by the fact that no one's learning. No one's shown the ropes how to communicate because of that. So the few people that can communicate without freaking out. Right.
Not freaking out is probably a good quality. And especially in this format, I feel like we could get on a topic that offends a lot of people very quickly. Well, not necessarily the audience. I mean, I don't think we care that much about the audience, but if you had a member that was really offended by something, it could make the conversation go south really quickly.
Right. Fortunately, especially if it goes into other hands of people that are not interested in the show, and they get things out of context, which is what happens to most people. It will eventually be the downfall of all of us, I'm sure. But I think that's also not as bad as it used to be, because there's such a large platform, or there's such a broad platform now. There's more places you can talk about it afterwards, because it used to be that once the platform had canceled you publicly, that there was no way to get back to your audience, because your audience belonged to the platform, not to you. And you couldn't then have a new channel open up. You couldn't get a new Instagram. You couldn't get a new website of your own, and you couldn't tell people, hey, this is a huge misunderstanding. And in fact, I don't feel this way, or whatever. And there's been new people that have been trying to fix that, because the other thing is the extreme right and the extreme left in terms of how loud they are is also similar. On Twitter, you have the extreme right, they're just like, and then you got the extreme left that are like, that, sound is a cultural appropriation. And, so it's like, it's getting annoying to everybody. It's at that level where,
it's like really, really loud white noise. And people are like, please just stop it.
Emphasis on white. And so they got to the level where you've got this group of people that are screaming all the time. And that was loud enough that for this group that desperate, and I remember working at CNN, how much they wanted informatics to work. Because like more than anything, more than they want to believe fake news, they want to believe that Nielsen ratings actually work and that, they can control Twitter and that they can learn from this stuff because that makes their jobs relevant because they went to school for that stuff. So if there's any truth at all to it, it's like when the Germans went trying to find Aryans in Tibet, like they will go to the end of the earth to try to prove their crazy conspiracy theory that people care about Nielsen ratings. That's just life. And so when Twitter started having responses and reactions from the extreme left, who were first to the scene, by the way, that the right were like, this is all, whatever, man. Like the right did not take to Twitter as quickly. It was an urban, liberal scene. It was a thing where you didn't have the suburban Masonic lodge mentality of Facebook. And so that was a very quick, I remember people in 2006 and 2008, it was not the same political drive. And as the right started to get there as well, it was like, well, this is in huge dynamic to what we've been hearing. All of our ratings have been from, it's not everyone speaking in these Nielsen ratings, it's specific families. It's not everyone speaking on Twitter. So you got a group of people that have been telling us that they really want us to be, to have more integration and more cultural. And you've also got groups that don't actually are literally so post-racist. It's not even about humanity at this point. It's just about money and marketing. So you have like a commercial and some families are like, oh, why is this family like, you got a Asian kid with a black mother and a white father. Like, how is it possible? Is it an adoption like such a situation? And the thing is, it's not that they really are trying to say we want that model. It's that they're saying, hey, the demographics for these groups, if we put them all together on the screen, this is a thing. And people are always missing that. They're always thinking, oh, this must be some sort of a political plot to destroy the nuclear family. No, it really isn't. They don't have nuclear families. You think that they've already destroyed them, as far as it goes. The idea of the marriage is dead. It doesn't last.
We lost the war on that one.
Yeah. And so they've already moved past it. And now they're saying, hey, this is the new thing we're building, which will be like the community, the Hillary Clintonian community. Where's my little bringer out for that?
Nice.
Great if you have a pecan or something, or like a super useful. If you have nuts, she'll break them.
So the only prop I can bring out, I still have a recorder. That's
nice. We got another super chat. I should have paid attention. It says, I'd better ask questions, but YouTube is so sensitive, they'll ban Xirtus. Yeah, right. That's kind of a thing. Yeah. It does happen that way. And it is what it is. I went through a scare recently, like where my channel was paused for a moment, and it was right before last week's show. Things go like that. Like people, and that's the thing is I've had friends lose channels and then they get new channel. I had like a huge Twitter at one point from like the old days, and it was banned and shut down. It was because of a thing I had a little qualm with Alex Winter from Bill and Ted, which was completely misunderstood by him, by the way. But at a certain point, you have to just remember that you are you, and you can build, and I still have my Odyssey. I could build a new channel. I have a backup channel, as long as it's not that they said Andreas is so bad. This should get us into Steven Crowder. Guys, Steven Crowder was banned for 2 weeks because he had Kaylee Lake on the show. Let me pull that up. Crowder, Kaylee Lake, who is awesome, by the way. I like Kaylee Lake. Carrie Lake. Is that right? Carrie Lake.
I've always, I get annoyed by a lot of people. Like, the show is called Louder with Crowder because like he's just so obnoxiously loud. But
he's adorable. Garrett from Base AF that you show with, he works with Crowder. Crowder's cool. He definitely has the change my mind meme is huge, right?
It's a huge meme. But like sometimes like when you do that kind of thing, when you go onto college campuses and you say, hey, how valid is your political opinion? Like you're still talking to children.
That used to be my favorite thing to do, though. I can sympathize. When I was younger, man, and I went to college, I would go into my like mid-20s. Like I would go to college for that because it was so fun to watch these like 19-year-old kids that were trying to get into political science. you know, the flatulence of pop culture, and they're just saying, yeah, I'm gonna understand this. And there's Rush Limbaugh and Ross Perot and these I get it. You know, I always thought that was really funny, you know, and I get why that's something they're still doing it. But yeah, you're right. You're just kind of picking on kids. I mean, it's like they don't know that they're still kids or something, right? I mean,
it's easier to tear down ideologies than it is to build a valid one. And I think that's what I think more of that dialogue of like, here's some sound reasoning. Here's maybe where we need to go with things. I think that's much more in high demand, where I feel like that kind of journalism is more, it's more like I would say below the belt propaganda. It's designed.
No, that's the thing. I think someone mentioned that Crowder is kind of a fence sitter or lukewarm, or I think Memory said it. And it's not like safe not to be. If you're trying to be on YouTube, you have to seem like you're a fence sitter, right? I mean, it's kind of, I mean, it depends, because it's just such a broad idea of what the fence is really. And it gets more and more, and there's more and more contextual reasons why it doesn't matter. But the beautiful thing also is, and I think I get why, you know, so I also wonder, why does the liberal, classic liberal still identify with the Democrat? And it's because they really were done wrong, or they felt done dirty by the neoconservative movement that took over the Democrats after taking over the Republicans, right? It took over the Republicans. It kind of destroyed the Republicans while it had already destroyed the Kennedy movement, right? And the Kennedy movement ends in this sort of, you know, that's the beginning of the new Democrats as well, whatever you want to say about it. Like, we really are there's, you know, the communists in the 20s and 30s became, and you can look up articles on this idea of the neoconservatives being the origins being Trotskyites. Let me see if I can just pull that up. Neoconservative origins, Trotskyites. Let me pull that up. Okay. Because it's a pretty common, you know, known thing that Stalinites were fighting with Trotskyites, and the Stalinites became Democrats, or they were the Democrats were sympathizing with Stalin, while the Trotskyites went on to really take over the Republican Party, right? And they'd already in the 30s and 40s been anti-Stalinist. And this is an interesting perspective on the Republican Party itself, because, you know, what did they do? They created an oligarchy that controlled a feudal state. They issued out a social system to standardize and protect businesses in America from going under for a longer period of time. They ensured the as long as possible the continuity of this social society, this society, regardless of mining towns going bankrupt, regardless of any of that stuff. You've got these franchises that come into towns to guarantee those towns can still survive off of Taco Bell and McDonald's and everything else like that. This is Leninism, right? And this is what neoconservatives promised. They promised us Leninism, but they said, hey, you know, these Democrats, they're wrong. Like, they're doing Leninism all wrong. Like, we're supposed to have social services this way, Social Security, right? Very much a Republican initiative that ended up in the hands of the Democrats, right? And social health care. Nixon was pushing for social health care. So, I mean, we flip these ideas so hard, right?
Yeah. And I'm going off topic if I'm going to talk about subjects like that.
You go ahead. I mean, what is off topic? We can say a few more things about Crowder. I would say I love Crowder, and I get why he does what he does, and I hope to see him back on the show in 2 weeks. You know, I think that's important. Like, Carrie Lake is hot, by the way. I think she's a cute lady, and I hope she comes on the show.
You're more knowledgeable than I am, because like I don't know her as a figure yet. I would have to like read up on her.
I met her once, so I feel bad that I called her Kaylee, because I was like, oh, that's right. But like, she came to the Timcast before, and she's cool. She's like high energy, and I think she has some good policies and in general. But again, you know, all these politicians are also having to be fence sitters, if that's what you mean, because that's the constituency sitter, right? You know,
what was the reasoning behind him getting his channel?
I forget the whole thing. Let me get to his post about it, because I know he put it on Instagram somewhere. Crowd.
Yeah, well, that's related to another topic. Well, I might have been going to talk about Jordan Peterson for a little bit. And so like I've discussed why I don't necessarily watch Steven Crowder, or even like necessarily think the platform is worth, watching, even because like I think it's a little bit, it's more slightly inflammatory.
It was she had committed some sort of election fraud comments or something to that effect.
Huh.
Right.
Well,
So
I mean,
she's got some strange beliefs. America, calm down.
There's a lot of them out there, and that's what's concerning, is because there's so much extremism behind the Biden administration and a lot of the ideology. But we can see that on the other side of the fence is like, well, there is a lot of weird extremism with Trump. I think when you look, and I don't think to the degree that every election has some sort of election fraud, I don't think there was, excessive election fraud in the 2020 election. At least
it is. We should be careful too. But the thing is, I would say with the okay, so with Trump, one of the things, and I know a lot of people that like him. I know a lot of people that used to like him. I have my opinions, and I think they're pretty clear for people in general, that I trust no one, but I do like it when someone goes up against the whole system. So I thought it looked like a great thing. Like Alex Jones was all about somebody who was clearly not part of the left or the right coming into the picture is the same kind of. And I can say this to Democrats, but really to the more tangential left of Santa Cruz and of California and of the interesting kind of people that want to have a third party option. A third party option is very similar to the kind of ideology that led to people saying, yeah, give Trump a chance. It's a good idea. Trump did not do all the things that people wanted him to do, the Fauci situation and everything else. It's important to remember that the people who hate him the most, the reasons that a lot of people stopped liking Trump are because he did things that they would like. He went along with their thing a lot of the time. And so it's up to you what you think about all that, but it's on another level that it becomes dangerous, literally, not because of him, but because of Americans, as setting a precedent for a president to be this cult of personality answer. Because it's like, really, then you're saying, is this guy really has to be as close to Christ as possible to save the world and be the Pope or something, has to have the spirit endowed in him, because he's up against everything in the world and the system itself is broken. And that's a really scary way to go about things, because in general, you do want to have people saying, hey, we have all these tools in the Constitution and in the court system that can be used to fix the system itself. I think for the most part, I don't know if that's always true. There's a lot of people that really believe that the system is broken and it needs to be completely replaced, but that's usually a liberal line of thought. And so it would have been really interesting if Trump had gotten somehow a way to grab the left more, grab a little bit, because he's got so much of the right at the time. And again, he's not the left or the right. So for him to go in and grab part of the party, it would have been great. The left and the right is a show rather than just play along with it. He could have said, hey, left guys, I'm going to put left people on my cabinet too. There are some of them that he agreed with at the time. And by making it seem more and more like it was all about this grand old party thing rather than this new movement thing, I think that also it scared people.
But he definitely morphed the Republican Party in major ways.
Because the Republican Party was dead after McCain. It wasn't. That's exactly how it was when the neoconservatives took over after Watergate. Yeah,
and I would say the biggest weaknesses is that, well, one thing people don't pay attention to is that yes, like he was a sort of a maverick of the Republican Party, but that doesn't mean he's the type of maverick that was needed, or that the cult of personality aspect is a good part. And the way I say that is, in my brain, I break it down into, I think there are two ways to describe the ruling classes. I think you have both the political elite, and I think you have the social elite. And even if Trump broke down what we traditionally think of as the political elite, he still represented the social elite and, well, economic elite to a certain degree. And so he's not from the same breed of working class citizens. He doesn't represent working class citizens.
I honestly, so this is a funny thing, and I honestly disagree. And I'm not like, this is not because I'm not like a huge like, Trump's a working man. That's not where I'm going with that. Yeah. But it's more the Kennedy enigma that he had, and Kennedy comes from, you can say, oh wow, the Kennedys, wow, you know what, and as a Fitzgerald, like, God bless them. But they are a drug running family that were involved. They were porters. They grab ale barrels and they put them from one boat to another boat, right? And eventually they married into the Fitzgeralds, and eventually they were doing prohibition work, and they were during the prohibition they were licensed to sell as much alcohol as anybody. No one else could do what they could do. And so because they built themselves to a place in America, American style, right? That's what you do. You come over here with what little you have, which is your cleverness and what you used to do, which is not a dumb thing, by the way. Being a porter is a great important thing, and it saves civilization. It wasn't just barrels, it would be Byzantine books and paintings, right? This is the Renaissance could not have happened without Irish porters, on this at the same time. But hookers, prostitutes, new money, they're all connected, this idea. And so Trump, having his grandfather's Canadian background, a Canadian saloon, right, which is with prostitutes in the old West and everything, that is a very American upbringing. And it's a specific kind, because we have a idea of America as being first generation people just getting here, which is not the greater extent of America. That is a part of America, and we need it and we love it because it needs to confluence with us. And even the Republicans, right, they like it when they have some German or African who's been educated come over to America and goes through their system. They're not arguing about that either. So this idea that it's about immigrants is ridiculous. It's about bureaucracy. And of course, they're going to argue about bureaucracy and make it about people, but it is about bureaucracy, because the numbers and data does exist. We've been going into drones or watching migratory patterns, right? So they have all the data. And they're just saying, hey, this is going to be a lot easier for us if we start to monitor things from above, and we don't get people involved because they're going to lie about it anyway. These are the kinds of issues that they don't want the people to hear, because the people aren't going to vote on those issues that way. They're going to hear them and they're going to go for the emotional response every time.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that point. And I guess I didn't know much about Trump's heritage. So the whole saloon thing, that's new information to me. And
dude, and his youth too. Have you seen that movie, The Landlord, with sorry, keep going. I'll find the movie while you talk.
No, you're good. And so when I evaluate his life, I think I still think, his whole experience and what morphed his ideologies, I think he's still coming from a pretty privileged position.
Oh yeah, he's definitely no one else could be where he's at, right? I agreed point. He's not just your poor guy. But okay, so this movie Landlord, starring Beau Bridges, which is funny because there is kind of a weird there was a thing for a while with a bunch of people saying that he was playing Trump or something in the weird conspiracy world of 4chan and whatever. But this movie is it's based on Trump, and it's about this well-to-do kid whose family have some houses in Connecticut and some money, of course, because they've been generationally getting themselves up there. But he wants to make it in the world himself. So by rebelling against his WASP upbringing, he goes to a Brooklyn neighborhood and buys some project housing, and then starts to renovate it. And he starts to make relationships, not just sexual, but full on, business and community integration with
polyamorous with two black women.
That too, because it's the 60s. But with these persons of color's community, he gets himself involved and they start to respect him, right? Charlie Murphy's in the movie. It's a pretty important movie. And that movie was about this newspaper article that this kid who is the son of a Trump, he's going to go in, he's going to buy a big chunk, and this new money's coming into our town. And not just that, he doesn't understand good business. He's not going to bring in Catholics, he's not going to bring in the Irish and the Italians. He's going to let the Jews live there, and the persons of color, he's not even going to kick them out. And this was a big thing because racism was pretty big, and they were upset at Trump for being so tolerant and open-minded. And I know that upsets people to hear that. I mean, because they're like, no, he's supposed to be the bad guy. But in this particular circumstance, it was the 60s and he wasn't as bad, and he used to be friends with Oprah. Let's calm down.
Yeah, I do think on the racial aspect of things, I think that was one thing that was propagandized so hard. Is they tried so hard to make Trump be a racist. He's in helicopters smoking blunts with basketball stars. Calm down, America. That's the problem. It's also because it shows you, it's when homophobes beat up people and then they jerk off on their way home thinking about them. If you're obsessed with racism, it's because you're perhaps a racist a lot of the time.
That is what's, and you can see it in the fact that racist policies are still happening. We were talking yesterday about Minnesota's teachers union will start to remove all the, white tenures first. The first tenures to go will be the white tenures. And people are like, as it should be. It's like, okay, but that's a race-based policy, right? I mean, it's illegal, but it's also unethical. I don't know if you feel like that anymore, but
it's not. And like, I think you can only criticize Trump for racism in so much as you can attach racism to a separation of classes. Like if I don't
racist against Trump. I feel like Bill Clinton is racist against Trump. He's the Caddyshack. They went to his golf club. He was so grateful to be invited to some of these parties when he was a little bit, because he didn't get invited to all their parties. And it was mainly because he kept having eventually to throw the parties and be like, look how great Gatsby I am. He's great Gatsby. Okay. Do you know who Morton Downey Jr. is? Have you heard of Morton Downey Jr.? Do you know Morton Downey Jr.?
No.
Oh God, nobody knows Morton Downey Jr. So Morton Downey Jr. Right, totally different Morton Downey Jr. Morton Downey Jr. is the greatest talk show host that ever lived. Now, he's a horrible man. Don't get me wrong. But in another dimension, he was president of the United States after JFK didn't die. And in the 80s, during the nuclear atomic 1960, after the atomic wars, World War III, he was president in the other timeline. But in this timeline, all he was a talk show host. And the son of Morton Downey Sr., Morton Downey Sr. was the Irish Nightingale. He was this great singer in the old days, in the 30s, 40s, 50s. And in the 50s, they even tried to make Morton Downey Jr. into a singer. And wouldn't you know it, that they had a house right next to and behind the JFK estate and the Teddy Kennedy estate. So he was super tied in with the Kennedys, right? And he could have been somebody. But he had a lot of problems. He's really crazy. He Me Too'd people and all that. He was a horrible guy.
Yeah, he has like a Gary Busey look on his face.
He got lung cancer and died because he's like, I smoke 4 packs of cigarettes a day and I love America. And he was full on insane. But at the same time, Jerry Springer would never like charge at a guest. He would just start screaming at a guest. He'd just be like, and he'd call him names and stuff. And there are things he did in TV you cannot do today, and you certainly can't do on the internet. I mean, the kinds of shows that he would put out there. But the Kennedy mystique, right? So there's this idea that Kennedys really, they rose up the same way.
You can't even have a news, I don't think, on like.
Oh my God! In this episode, I shouldn't even talk about it. But there's a kid there, and he puts the noose on the kid, and then the camera turns. And then they make it look like it falls, and like they literally, I can't even imagine a show that gets away with the stuff he did. But he eventually turned on the Kennedys, and he tried to help the Republican Party when it started to really be the new neoconservative party to take over and move it forward. And he chose to do that as opposed to help the Democratic Party become the more wild party, right? And there's like bunch of these guys that were doing that, like, and then you can think of Roger Stone and things like that, right? Roger Stone, similarly. Roger Stone is a libertine, and he could have very easily been part of the Democrats, but he saw the opportunity because if you're looking for work, you look for a place where you can work. So the Republican Party was the party of choice at that time, right? But the Kennedys, that was the last big thing. And when the Kennedys got away, that's when they got rid of JFK, when it was clear they weren't going to allow for an American family to, even if it takes 4 generations or 5, to rise to a point where they could compete in the arena with these older families that are all King Plantagenet descendants. That was when they realized there's no point. And they deviated from the Democratic Party. And this is what led to the neoconservatives in the Republican Party. And why Watergate, which is such a non-freaking issue, and compared to like church committee hearings, I keep saying why that's not the thing. I mean, I just will never understand, right? Because church committee hearings is the mission impossible of Watergate. It's just dudes with sound changers and microphones and plastic masks on to hide their identities, talking about being secret agents, holding the Weather Underground teenagers over bridges, right? And just scaring them and putting them back in their beds after drugging them and saying nothing happened and just freaking them out. Like, that's the more interesting stuff, right?
Yeah. Like, I wish I could just be like in a room with Donald Trump and like just sit down and like discuss like, hey man, just less crazy, just like I think the world needs that, like, and it's amazing because he actually seemed like he was pretty reasonable, like as far as like a diplomat,
I feel like it's kind of the sad truth is it's the opposite, right? And so we're at a new point where Trump has been made relevant again because of, and this is not even me saying it, Bill Maher said this again. I've been checking out some of the left and laden material because I keep thinking
one question when you're done.
Yeah, go ahead. No, sorry.
Yeah.
I can remember.
Do you believe the claims that they are actually continuing the investigation, therefore they cannot release the search warrant?
Right, yeah, no, of course they are. There's, eventually you're gonna have to fess up. So the longer it takes to do that, the less it's in public eye. The irony being, it gets closer and closer to midterm elections and things like that. So it's actually helping him more. That's kind of my point. It was so Bill Maher and watching the left people, because so many of the left blocked so many people that they were like in a vacuum during when Trump won the first time, that I do always the opposite and try to study, watch whatever they're, like, it's so hard because you have to grit and hold it together and just trying to absorb without thinking. So that until later, not feeling is the hardest part, not feeling through it. But once you get through watching both the extreme left and the extreme right's media, you can see that they're talking about the same things. And Bill Maher said it exactly the same as, what's his name? Gutfeld, that Trump is benefited by this new PR that's happened. He's going to be seen and talked about more. There will be more and more people that will be saying, objectively, is it right? And since it's not, that's going to affect people that are more objective. There's not a lot of them, but there are educated people that are objective and just looking at the legality of the situation. They can't, and the most arguments are going to be, but he's Trump. That's going to be the most emotional argument. So people that aren't swayed by that and are thinking what's constitutional and there's a lot of people like that like to watch court TV, want to see the Heard Depp trial. Those kinds of people, they're the ones who are going to be considering and reanalyzing it more and more. So he's hugely benefited by the whole thing. And I also think he's going to have to push harder. My argument was he has to go push harder to be more crazy, because when he stopped being crazy, he lost his support group. His fans, mostly his fanatics, right, are people that want him to do that, to go on Twitter to say these things, to just be just off the cuff or beyond, to separate himself, to say unanimity -1, the whole oligarchy. I'm separate from that. I'm not gonna dress like you or play your games. That would be the way that he could actually further his cause more, right? And everything he did the other way was, going along with the flow. Now I could be wrong, because it could be that there's just way more go along with the flow people, and that's why he had to do it. And but it didn't seem like it worked, but maybe it did. And we're just dealing with the fallout there. And again, we have to be careful what we say.
Yeah. And going back to what I said last week, I actually do kind of think, the left and the right, they secretly love each other. They like it when they're in power. So if they can make as much drama as they can, theoretically now they care if Trump wins, but they also don't care that much, because I think he's like the de facto Republican leader right now. Like, he's the most influential Republican member.
There's two Republicans. There's Liz Cheney, and so everyone's all like, "Oh, it's over. Liz Cheney's gone." And I have to keep reminding them, polls do not defeat a Cheney. Like, one does not simply defeat a Cheney in poll. But yes, okay. So if she had
it's going to be whoever Trump selects. It's going to be whoever he has. So much of his base is just like pro Trump.
It won't be DeSantis now, because DeSantis, I don't think, did what he needed to do. And if he did, it wasn't public, so I don't know. But if he had done a public thing, then we would say, oh, obviously it would be that. But I think Trump could still be, he could still be the candidate. The truth of it is, it's not the Republicans who need to be swayed to Trump. It's the Democrats. Like, it's the left that needs to see that they've picked a guy who is sleepy and tired. So that means that even more crazy people behind the scenes do more stuff. That's what Dick Cheney was for George Bush, right? Everyone on the Democrats think about, oh, he was this cowboy, he was silly. Even though I have qualms with the Yale theatrics, master Skull and Bones kid being a clown for just being foolish. I think it's a brilliant thing to be a clown. Even qualms with that. Yeah, the idea that Dick Cheney was able to take over more and have more executive unitary theory. He had the power to do anything because the president can't commit a crime, right? I mean, according to the Constitution, Article 2, if the president does something, it's legal, right? So for instance, George Bush and the Guantanamo Bay, terrorism couldn't be treason, torturing, all these things. Torturing couldn't be a thing. It had to be enhanced interrogation because the president was doing it, right? And so that was the precedent that really scared the left, because they put a guy in power who they didn't want to have that thing that they've been abusing, right, for so long. And the back and forth, we remember, at least it's funny, some groups, it's hard though, because now you tell a Democrat, hey, you know, George Bush, but they've seen him on Ellen, right? Because Ellen dated Mary Cheney, or they were friends, or whatever the deal is. And, you know, so there's that whole thing there. However, I think the Liz Cheney cult is bigger than people realize. And it's very similar to the one that exists in the Democratic Party, because it is the same group of neoconservatives, and they don't care what the polls say exactly. They're trying to push a show into the mainstream and make it popular. They're not trying to find what people want and give it to them and make money off that. They already have their money. They want to keep their money. They want to push this thing into the limelight. So Liz Cheney and her whole group, they still have, I mean, like, they can still buy and they can still grease, and it's not over. That's definitely not over. Meanwhile, though, I do think that Trump will continue to he'll continue to be talked about more and more. It's all going to come down to if in 2023 or by New Year's, Twitter or something allows him back onto the internet. Because one of the major platforms, even if it starts with Elon Musk, is going to have to start with letting him back into the limelight. And then that's going to be also, gosh, what's he going to do? And who knows? It might be so crazy it offends more people. It might not. It might be just the reaction he's looking for.
No, the Musk shit is kind of funny. Like, well, there's a lot of people that I think blindly support him because our system is kind of geared for you to love tycoons. You know what I mean? And so obviously, anytime a tycoon comes around, you're like, people are going to.
I'm an oil man, right?
Yeah, I'm an oil man. I'm an electric man. But no, the reason why he turned down the Twitter deal was because it was a bad fucking deal. Like, Twitter's actually like a shit company, and that's like it was fun while it lasted, I guess. But like, I don't think people realize that. They're so quick to back him and say, "Oh, it's just all bots." Like, yeah, people know there's fucking bots on Twitter. Like, if you don't know there's bots, like, you're an idiot. But like, as far as like its platform as a company, and here's I'm relating this to Jordan Peterson too. Like, why does Jordan Peterson care what happens on Twitter? I don't understand it. It's never been a good platform. It's never been a free speech platform. It's always been biased. And if you didn't know it was biased, you're probably stupid.
I mean, I think the Democrats would say it's Poland, right? It's a territory that if it gets taken, then it will mean the end for the Allies eventually, because the Axis will have encroached on their sovereignty or their safe space. I think that it's looked at now, the metaverse, as a war of territories. And you know, because the internet is not the internet now. There's just a few intranets that are intraneted together, and so you focus on the Facebook. But it's amazing because they are so different. Like, Facebook is so weird. They are just so, I mean, they're both weird in different ways. Twitter's weird because there's, you know, transgender pornography and whatever you want. Facebook's weird because there's not, actually. It's weird because they're so hard into censorship on Facebook. They'll be like, you know, earlier, I think I said at some point, let's say gravity, right? Let's say you're a bat, right? Well, on Facebook, I got in trouble because I did that once. I'm like, you know, let's say you're a bat. And they're like, you just said they're a bat. You called them a name. That's 7 days. And they just like take you down for a while. Facebook is weird. That is like, Singapore doesn't do that for bubblegum. You know, it's just strange. It's a strange world we live in. But Twitter will allow you to do all these things. And it's interesting because then people will say, well, how far can we take it? Can we take it a little bit further? Can we go a little bit further? And this is something I was thinking about a lot earlier. Like, they're like, oh, Reddit won't let us say groomer. Well, good, because you're using the word wrong anyway, because the word should mean like you're grooming horses or something. If you're talking about social engineering of children in order to deviate from the heteronormative family nucleus, say that. Talk about that. Say social engineers because what are they going to do? Take away social engineer? And also it makes you sound more intelligent because it's the accurate term, and it makes other people afraid because it's a scientific word. If they don't know much about it, they're like, oh, social engineer, what is that? That sounds way worse than somebody who takes care of My Little Pony. So I don't know. I think we need to start just being more clear with our words anyway.
Yeah, I think social engineering is also a process that's happening constantly. It's been happening ever since the public school system became such an ingrained part of society. And ever since we have the Department of Education. The Department of Education has been social engineering people, since that time. So it's like, it might be overall a good thing that we're starting to question all of the ways in which children are influenced, because eventually, like, you can only question so much before it becomes impossible to miss the fact that our education system is missing a lot of gaps. Like, if you agree with the ideology that they're taking on one stance, what other ideological things are they, ingraining into people from a very early age? That's the next natural question. And it might be a good thing in the long run. Sorry, I had one other thing to say about social media, because, like, you're completely correct to say that you were talking about Reddit. Reddit seems like the worst experience. Like, if I try to communicate with anyone, like, openly, it's like, if I try to ask a simple question on Reddit, it's like there are 4 bots telling me that I can't ask a question about,
you don't have clearance, you don't have the permission. It's like it's weird. They don't want you.
It's the weirdest social media platform out there. And you're like, what is karma? Oh, karma means you need to, like, comment a whole bunch. And then you try to comment, you can't comment because you don't have enough karma. And it just seems to be this weird vicious cycle of where everybody's just patting everyone's back for the wrong reasons. And, like, the main idea is using the site mindlessly enough until you can use it mindlessly enough again, and that transfers over to, like, Wall Street Bets. One of the reasons why that, like, subreddit is just, like, so bad is if you have an opinion, say you're you could predict accurately that the stock market is going to go down and it's going to, like, suck because you're actually paying attention to fundamentals. You get downvoted and your opinion gets silenced. So everybody is destined to get bad information. So there are multiple reasons why it seems like Reddit is just like a cesspool of just, like, terrible information and terrible ideology.
Yeah, I mean, it is like trying to pat people on the back is a good way to put it. They're trying to not like, well, but here, kind of as much as possible. And I think Emily says it sounds like a Black Mirror episode. Reddit is very much and I mean, it's sad because, of course, Aaron Schwartz, and love Schwartz, love what he tried to do, but it got taken from him, right? But on the other hand, the things that are trying to be super free, because of the way this divide has happened, this is it's made Gab into, like, a hate space. It's a safe space for hate, which is all right, because it should be allowed to be released in a safe environment. It's way better than it being released in an airport, but it's bad. It should be that there's a way that people can get that out earlier before it builds up and then become a problem. And maybe this is part of your honeypot American government or agencies. You're trying to, like, get Gab guys and girls and gals and whatever, and study them so that you can get them, like, a massive boost of ketamine sulfate or something in an ear or a nose drip or something, and just fix them. Maybe that's all your plan. But instead, what's going on is more and more people aren't getting that. They're getting more and more extreme, and they're not hearing from each other. And okay, it's cool that people have opinions that are really extreme, because I think it's horrible that people get hurt. Extreme opinions are cool. It's amazing. It's not cool. It's just amazing. I'm amazed by the fact that people have such extreme. It's important to have the human experience has to have the craziest possible thoughts. That is probably one of the more valuable things humans can do. It's even safer than having dangerous, powerful actions. Actions can hurt so many people. If they're in a way that doesn't affect lots of people, because that's a big thing now. One person says something, millions of people hear it. Maybe not millions of people should be hearing from Stephen Colbert, right? And we're figuring that out. There probably are some people that can listen to Stephen Colbert because it reinforces their working at a bank, that's fine. Like we can let that happen, but not everybody needs to do that. We're in a horrible situation because of that. I mean, we just need to let people communicate, but we need to figure out how we can help train. And this is what, because you were bringing up APM and modding, like all we're trying to do there is figure out how people can communicate these thoughts in a safe way that and it's cool because we're trying to figure out what is the, this ministry of magic think is the safest or the ethical, or what level will they allow, what's it going to take for this exchange of ideas to happen? What do you have to do it in a box with a fox, with a mouse in a house? Like, just let us know how the exchange of green eggs and ham is going to happen. And it's crazy.
Yeah. And I think really it's that aspect. I mean, it's different. I think it's a different conversation than for this show, but I think it's just like weeding out the people that have proven to be intolerant. And unfortunately, you just have, if you can't be criticized and you think your ideology is above criticism, like I think that's the wrong page for people. You know what I mean? I think. Some people report like if you have like an anti-Christian post, but it's not like a hateful post. It's just like, theoretically, what proof do we have that Jesus existed? People report stuff like that, and then that's not extreme at all. That's like a valid, philosophical question. What is our proof? And so that can cause a discussion, and some people just don't like that, and that's not. They haven't approached the mental maturity to have that kind of discussion, so it's like it's not for them. But yeah, I didn't want to talk too much about that because I feel like that's like a separate like mod discussion thing, I guess.
No, it's good though. I mean, these are things like people can understand, like the vibe we're going for is like more content, more conversation, exchange. That's all we're trying to do. And it is hard when people are just trying to start fights with each other in order to end the fight quickly. I mean, if you're trying to spar, let it allow. Yeah.
Pedro starts fights for the one of it. I respect it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I want Pedro to be a mod kind of, but at the same time, I know it would screw him because like people would report his posts and it would bring him down. So like, I think he's kind of, he's making enough content that we have to keep him safe from himself. Right.
Yeah.
I was also going to say something about LSD and drugs and demons and stuff earlier. And I kind of thinking I'm going to bring it back to that. Salvia. So the idea that
Salvia is fucking weird.
Right. And so the idea that I was thinking about it at the time, but I just didn't want to stop it, is like ergot is, you're saying, oh, well, maybe these are the dark demons. I don't know. It's the good and bad thing we were saying earlier, the chaos and the order. All demons, right? Like it's all diamonds. Diamonds are demons. These are programs running in your BSD and Unix system that are applications that are running diamonds, right? You can call them demons, but that sounds so much scarier. These programs that are running in your electron reality, right? Tron. These diamonds are all part of these chemical crystalline resonant systems because you're built up of these quantum computers that are wireless and they're connected to each other through a acid. They're inside of an acid. You're basically a liquid cooled computer system, and it's not bad. So while these explosions,
it's amazing. Like one of the first like experiences I had, like I kind of realized, well, like I mean that computer system is amazing. Like every brain is basically the most powerful computer system in the world so far. But at the same time, it's like we have so much information entering that computer system every day and constantly at a constant basis. Like think about, like if you see the world in like I don't know, whatever the resolution, like 2160p, and you're getting that feed of information constantly, and you're getting that feed constantly from other senses too. It's like that's actually a little bit overload. Like think about how many gigabytes of information that is like every day. So that definitely led me to the conclusion that like we don't ever have an accurate representation of reality. We have to have an interpretation of reality constantly, and like that doesn't just apply for our consciousness. That goes for our subconscious, and that goes for our sensory input as well. Our sensory input to our immediate experience is definitely an interpretation of what's going on. We can never fully understand it. That sorry to jettison that. I'm not trying to wrap the conversation around that. But
that's a key thing also, is like what we're experiencing is a limited amount of perception. It might also be because you don't have, okay, it's not might, it is, because you don't have the computing power to process all the data that you're getting at once. And we see this all the time. You can buy a cheap Chinese camcorder that gets 1080p, has a good CMOS scanner, but the computer in it is running Unix or some sort of a variant of Debian is recording into H.264, which has got a low color scan. It's literally just scanning beads of pixels, like lines. And if you try to edit that, which if we try to edit this video, it's an H.264, it's going to lose color spectrum. It's going to get blotchy. There's all these like losses, which the CMOS scanner is like, dude, what happened? I scanned all that stuff for you. I told you it was a green pixel, it was a red pixel. Why did you screw this up? You had one job. And it's because the computer can't register all that. We have this problem because of our hemoglobin. Not completely, but it's a big part. You have to have the liquid cooling system bringing oxygen to also cause the chemical reactions that can be fed to the iron. And this is a big part of our system. There's only enough blood to run maybe like a third of the system at once, which is why you get tired when you eat, because digestion is like, you usually don't have to do that. But when you're doing it, you're not going to be running around. But as soon as you start running from a tiger, your digestion turns off, right? Because you're
like chess players like burn like 2,000 calories in the tournaments, just like brain power alone. It's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, Ian always made fun of me. He's like, that must be where your food's going, because you can eat so much food and you must be thinking it out. Like, but it's true. You can. I think about that also when I sleep. I can burn like 1,800 calories sleeping. I'm like, what am I dreaming about? Am I dreaming about building pyramids? Like, what's happening? Am I swimming?
While you're talking, I'm gonna try to think of this. No, I dreamt that I did DMT last night.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It
was wild shit. It was the wildest shit ever. Now, I'm glad I remembered that, because it was literally like it was one of those lucid dreams where, I mean, I don't know if it could be a lucid dream otherwise. Like, I dreamt I was with one of my friends, and, there was sometimes in the dream reality, it feels like it's actual reality. And I dreamt I was with the friends and I was trying DMT. And when I tried DMT, it was like I had that 20-minute, like out of body experience, right. So it was, but I don't know if I learned anything from that. You know what I mean? I just remember total dissolution of like sensory organs. Then I came back to that reality. Then I woke up into this reality. It was just, I don't know if I can extrapolate anything from it, but I definitely forgot who I was in that. Yeah,
and you've done DMT before, right? I mean, you can.
No, you've never done DMT.
Interesting. So, okay, so for one of the things, you've seen Waking Life, and you've seen some movies at least. You've seen Waking Life, I hope, yeah.
Well, now I have a good recommendation.
Whoa. Okay, yeah. Well, so that's a couple reasons that's cool. One, yeah, I'm excited for you, because that's like going to Disneyland, getting on Splash Mountain. Congratulations, you're gonna have a good time. But also, not having seen it, it's interesting that you're, like, where do these ideas come from about what a thing is, right? If you haven't done the thing, and when you do these things, it is, Ken Kesey, Tom Wolfe, like all these guys who've done acid and these different drugs. We're talking about the crystal, the crystalline structures in DMT, for instance, in ayahuasca. I don't know why I'm doing this. Ayahuasca, it causes with the MAOI, it causes a specific resonance, perhaps. It's not necessarily just that you're releasing these chemicals, but maybe you're integrating with a wireless system and you're having an extra onboard computer. So your camera is getting all this data still from you, but it's, it's able to process it a little bit more, because all of a sudden now you have a GPU that's been added. And its job is just, while you guys are doing that, I'm going to help you check out this information. I'm going to put this in there, and I'm even going to cross-reference and index it for you. You know what? I got all the time in the world. And that can be really helpful. But also sometimes your whole system is like, whoa, what is all this data I'm not used to processing, or has a hard time integrating, which as it eventually that dissipates. Eventually you're at a point where that you're like, yep, and now I'm logging into Facebook, and now I'm logging into Hecate, and the goddess is doing her thing. But with salvia, because ashwagandha and ibogaine and ayahuasca and cat and ephedra and mushrooms and ergot, we could go through. I could do a lot of them. They're all connected with the spirit realm, to whatever group has been dealing with them. And there's a lot of scientists are like, ha 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 ha, there's no way. Clearly, these are just chemicals that are running through your brain. You even have cannabinoids. And so someone says, no, actually, it's connected with like cannabis, and this goddess is associated with this goddess feminine energy. The plant that you're getting it from is the female of the plant, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It rings hard for a lot of people that haven't gone through the spiritual experience. And so with salvia, it's like people freak out. And I think it's because the plant doesn't have that. It used to be that you eat and it took a while for people, and it still causes them to. If you go down and you take the ayahuasca ritual, you vomit and you go through a thing, and it's kind of uncomfortable a lot of the time. But with some of these newer drugs, especially extracts of things like salvia, you used to take a sweat lodge with it. It was very painful. And to get to it, you had to already go through the sweat lodge, which sucks. I mean, you can't do it on menstrual cramps. They don't let only the warriors that go through the hardest stuff. And even they are vomiting and going through. I mean, sweat lodge is horrible. One time I was in a sweat lodge and I got out right before this dude vomited. And I was like lucky because I was like, oh man, I missed the sweat lodge. And they're like, no, you're fine. He did it right into the hot stone. And the whole place was just a vaporous, vomit that we were breathing. And like, yeah, okay. So like there are demons that get, released in these circumstances. So by doing that, they have sort of a respect for the thing. And now you've got kids on the internet that are like, it's legal. Oh, it's so cool. And then they just buy a bunch of this extracted salvia. And they're like, what is happening? I thought the moon was playing tricks on me, grabs me through my soul, pulls my soul out of my body goes in behind my jacket, grabs my back, pulls my soul out, goes to the moon, get my soul back, realize the moon was playing tricks on me. I'm like, why are you making what I do? I thought we were friends, moon. Like these kinds of experiences, and they're not just psychedelic. They're not disassociative. They're beyond disassociative. They're deliriant. Like scopolamine or some of the Bruja witchcraft drugs as well. So we think of them as tricksters, right? Trickster is a huge other thing there, because trickster doesn't have to be good or bad.
Tricks me. Like I've tried to like really get like heavy doses of salvia, and people have told me like it's made them, have pretty like wild, like
you haven't broke through yet. That's good.
Yeah. I tried to break through. Well, like I've noticed some mild, color sensory changes. Like maybe it's a different, like, I guess more goopy, like visual experience for me than like mushrooms, but like it was never quite that. Like I noticed a little more like noodliness or goopiness of the room, but like that's as far as it went for me. Whereas like with mushrooms, like I've had experiences to where like if I close my eyes, I can pretty much make my visual field look like your shirt, but then make total dissolution and make it look almost like that. You ever seen Doctor Strange, the recent one where they go through those different dimensions? Like that's like you can get wild once you break through with that. You can get that wild shit. I've found, at least for me. Like
to the bears in the audience who are saying that it's not Beartaria approved. I just want Beartaria approved. I just want you to understand we're not really recommending these things at all. And in fact, a lot of the time,
not for everybody.
Not for everybody, and most people probably not. I think in general it can be dangerous, it can cause a lot of problems, and it's a lot easier to say, oh yeah, it's going to make my life better all the time. It doesn't always do that. It's a lot of time you got schizophrenic people coming out of it. It's just the same as if we were to say that, it'd be like a pharmaceutical company telling you that their pill could help you. It's just ridiculous. But it's also important to recognize this idea, I think importantly for the people that do this stuff, that it is associated with demons, right? I think Owen would agree with me there, that demons are associated with the spiritual realm, and I call them diamonds because I don't think it's just good or bad. There is that school of trickster. Trickster is part of the folk traditions of Scandinavia and of Europe, the Hilda folk. The idea that there are fairies and pixies and things are associated with mushrooms and whatever. Mushrooms, I would also say, I don't think that they're evil. I think it's ridiculous to say mushrooms are evil. They are. Paul Stamets will tell you the sixth extinction, the only thing that's going to save us is if we ally with the thing that can survive all these things. Mushrooms are more like us than anything else. They're not like plants. They are closer to animals. They're part of the Opisthokonta metazoa, which is what humans and animalia has come out of. So we do have all the same neurotransmitters and hormones. Maybe that's crazy, and maybe you're saying, hey, we should be careful with that, but I think everybody should be eating like turkey tail and healthy mushrooms like the Paul Stamets 7 and things like that. Lion's mane comes to mind. These cordyceps, these things are really good for you. You know, I mean, I'm not like a doctor, I'm not a health person, I'm not saying you should go do this, but I do think it's awesome when people find that cordyceps have helped them with their health, because mushrooms have the same immunity issues as us, and because they have the same neurotransmitters and hormones, it can help you with what the society has taken from you through bad food, bad germ in your wheat. We've gone into that recently. There's so many things what you have lost in your diet, and ergot and molds and things like that have always been part of health. They've been part of penicillin and everything else. So it's mainly just to say that there's a really weird prejudice against fungi and mold, and that it's not weird because it can be like a snake, it can kill you, but it also can be it can save your life.
Yeah. And I to back that up, I firmly believe there are two realities. I think this, like, spiritual reality is just as much a reality as material reality, and you can't convince people that don't want to be convinced of that. It's like, whatever, you don't have to believe that. And I would say a lot of these substances can put you in touch with that spiritual reality, but like the more time you spend there, it's like I felt like I've kind of felt my soul, I would say, like slipping a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, you can't get too used to being in that world. Like, and so like now I'm probably going to, like, it's fine. I think like Paul Stamets now, he says he does, shrooms twice a year, and that's good enough for him. And like, I'm starting to understand like why like he sees it that way, because like I had a period in my life to where like I felt like I needed a lot of like spiritual healing, and these helped me like get there. But like the more you do that without like integrating, and that's the way I'll say it, integrating like what you learn, but also saying, hey, this reality is just important as that reality. If you don't do that, I think you'll start to lose your grasp a little bit, or at least you put yourself at risk of doing that.
Yeah, if you start, it's like a crutch in the sense of like, if you have a GPU doing all the processing, your CPU can't process it for you. I also think that like marijuana's gotten a lot more potent over the decades, and it's kind of plateauing now because it's like, stop. And I think mushrooms have done the same and will do the same. There's probably a reason why people used to eat much, much, much smaller doses, 1600s and things like that, and pastas and things like that had mushrooms, and all these different kinds of borschts and stroganoffs and plates that had mushrooms in them. Yeah, you know what? Gonna go ahead and say it. Some of the times had neurotransmitters because they're champignons. That's what life in mushrooms are like. But that doesn't mean that we should be jumping to heroic doses, and there's reasons why it's impressive. I'm impressed with some, of these things, but also I think about, Pink Floyd, and, it's scary. You don't want people locked in a closet on 1,000 hits of acid who don't know what's happening, and hoping they come out of that okay after post-traumatic stress. It's the exact thing that we should be trying to help, MAPS. I don't care if it's Soros, if they're trying to help post-traumatic stress of soldiers, giving them some, methylene dimethylamphetamine in order to give them, an ecstasy boost of serotonin and dopamine, so they can process with the therapist some sort of a thing that they've psychologically blocked out. I don't care if it's Soros. I think that's a good idea, that someone should probably be doing that. But at the same time, people taking microdoses isn't going to solve all your problems. It's just a lot better probably than taking a lot of this stuff. I think and really, some of the most healthy people I know are people that don't need anything. They don't need any drugs, and then they're Mormons, and they can live their lives, and they're fine, and they get to spend all that time doing the thing that they really, once you've figured out what your problem is, you should be working on anyway. So being in a big proponent of taking psychedelics is a lot like being a proponent of AA. It's saying, oh, one day at a time, you should never do anything, or you should do it every day. I think it's pretty similar. It's like a diet fad. You probably got to just feel it out for yourself and not do too much, if any at all.
Different strokes, different folks.
Right. I don't know. I mean, I think it's important that people know about these things also, because I think I've been watching Morton Downey Jr., watching some of the old talk shows, seeing what they weren't allowed to talk about. And it's funny because like, there's like, everyone's like, oh, they could do all these things on TV. And they got the noose and whatnot, but we can talk about things they couldn't talk about. These are kinds of the things that we're allowed to talk about that weren't allowed to be talked about. The just say no Reaganomics period. Right. And I think it's a little more honest,
I would say like I totally disagree. Like, we obviously have a fucked up scheduling system in the US, but at the same time, like, if you think your life is fine, then your life is fine. Like, don't question yourself on that. But like, if you're looking for answers and you think you think the only solution to your problems is icing yourself, then like maybe, you know, there's some potential here, you know, like I think trying alternatives is better than icing yourself. And I say icing yourself because YouTube is weird about that sort of thing. But
ego death, Van Ram Dawson, ego death. I know that Paul Petrov says situational ethics, heroic dose. And for whatever that means, I think I get what you're saying. And I hear that. So that's pretty good, man. I think I get to go into my next show after this. Do you want to plug anything, or should we close? We could do another subject. You have one more thing you want to cover really quick?
This was such a good one. I will mention. All right. So when I was dreaming, I did DMT. What I specifically remember about the hallucinations is that there was specifically more blues and whites, and it was more geometric. But I don't know if that translates to reality, though.
Well, blues, right? You know that there's a larger spectrum of color that's blue, and so it makes up like 3 times as much spectrum as like green, and I think about 8 times as much as yellow. We have to look at the PAR density. If you type in PAR density color scale, you can see that color band, and you know, blue is a bigger chunk. And so there's always been that Madame Blavatsky kind of theory, or you know, whatever you call prophecy, you know, medium work, that revelation, that's it, that the blue is a cover up. Blue is covering up the lost colors, and that in the old days, you know, the Homer's Odyssey is about the Red Sea. There's no blue sea, the wine colored skies, the honey colored and red, and all these things. Egyptian blue is a green, right? They couldn't see it, and so eventually now we see blue, and we're like, oh wow, look at the blue sky. But during the day, it was just like friggin' nuts, because it was just rainbows of stars and crazy things that we can't even see now because they're beyond, they're ultra blue and infra yellow and things like that were in there, and whatever you'd want to call that, but we can't see them, and instead we just see this kind of blurred out blue, which is cover up stuff.
Yeah, I just didn't know if that related to any of your experiences, but like
I tend to see a lot of weird stuff. We should do that next time. We'll do a whole thing on shapes and peoples and the witches, right? You know, one time I saw Death as me, and he's like, "Don't F with me." And then that was the night my friend he got a call right after that. His dad had died that night. It was weird times in the life. But yeah,
the universe is a conscious being.
Yeah.
No,
say no. Say no to drugs. Don't give them your number. You know, don't let them go get in cars with drugs. You know, don't. Yeah.
Don't. Yeah, they're bad.
Right.
American Time Machine,
guys. All right, so I'm gonna go to the. You want to do the iTunes, Spotify? Which one is it?
Yeah, Spotify is good. But like now I've noticed like if you just have a lot of content, like a lot of people will just be searching for like a particular thing. So like sometimes you'll get a lot of like a little bit of monetization off of people looking for a very specific thing. So a lot of past releases have been that, but like
how's Clussy doing? Do people like Clussy?
YouTube likes Clussy. I think I have a few hundred listens on YouTube.
That's good. Guys, check out Clussy and Perceptua. And imagination is reality, I think. And I'm so horny. Hugs give me a boner. Explicit lyrics so just stay away from that unless you're for that kind of thing. So
getting more experimental, like with the sound in general, but like playing around with definitely playing around with a lot of ambience and how far we can take ambience. And playing around with the overall like auditory spectrum. And so like if you do little things like change the if you start changing the pitch of like the hi-hat from one like segment to another, but you do it very subtly, it very much creates a very weird effect to where like, you know, something's going on, but you can't point it out and you have to listen more closely. It's little things like that I'm starting to go more towards. So that'll be like this album and like the next album.
I love the use of electronica and acid guitar. It's super good. Guys, check out, and we should definitely upset CD Baby by like once in a while. We'll just play one of your songs on the show. That'll be hilarious. I think people will be like, really? But yeah, they're good. So it'll be awesome. Man. All right.
Guitar's just a beautiful instrument. I always thought it was just really beautiful. That's why I try to interject it every now and again.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's real. All right, man. I'll see you next time. Peace out.
It was a great conversation.
You too, man. We'll do it again next week.
I'll see you.
Whoa, I like this meme a lot, by the way. This one's cool. Did you post this one already? I haven't even seen this one. I like this. Conscious and conscious and conscious. Wow, this is
Pretty
great.
cool.
Don't follow your heart, it might only let you down. Follow only reason, emotions lead to treason. Only one thing will never let you down. To believe in yourself.